Looks like Mark Hunt's RICO lawsuit against Brock Lesnar and Dana White has backfired. The Fertitta brothers might just have to step in the octagon as Mark Hunt challenges Dana White to a unique fight. And did Jake Paul just make a really good point? Stick around to the end to find out all of this and more in today's video. Explaining Mark Hunt's lawsuit against the UFC. Back in 2017, the Super Samoan Mark Hunt filed a lawsuit against the UFC president Dana White and Brock Lesnar in the Nevada federal court under the RICO Act, which deals with racketeering organizations. Some of the charges filed include, but are not limited to, things like breach of contract, false pretenses, breach of the covenant of good faith and fair dealing, negligence, and unjust enrichment. In his lawsuit, Mark Hunt claimed that the higher-ups at UFC were already aware of Brock Lesnar's violation of their drug policy way before the match at UFC 200, but they chose to ignore it for the sake of profit. Mark alleged that the UFC allowed a doped-out Lesnar to step into the octagon with a clean fighter like him, not only jeopardizing his safety and well-being, but also tarnishing the image of the sport. After news of Lesnar's failed drug test, the decision of the match was reversed and Mark was declared the winner. According to the test reports, banned performance-enhancing drugs like clomiphene and post-psychotherapy, or PCT substances, were found in Lesnar's system. There were also traces of steroid and anabolic abuse in Lesnar's blood work. Hunt pointed out that there is a culture of suppressing test results in the UFC. He claims that the UFC also tried to sweep Vitor Belfort's drug test reports for UFC 152 under the rug, but failed when someone inadvertently emailed the test results to 29 other people, which included fighters, trainers, and managers. Why does the UFC hide test results? So why does the UFC hide test results? Well, the answer to that boils down to one word: profit. It's simple, really. The UFC couldn't have afforded to cut Lesnar from the card for UFC 200. The company had drained a lot of resources into getting WWE and Brock Lesnar to agree to a one-off appearance despite the exclusive nature of Lesnar's contract. The company was basically banking on the fact that having Brock on their card would pump ticket sales. For them, the outcome of letting a doped-out athlete compete was negligible in contrast to the money Lesnar brought in. They essentially put Mark in harm's way by putting him up against someone with an unfair advantage. Wow, a corporation prioritized profit over the health and safety of their workers. Who would have thought? Although the UFC denies all allegations, a lot of people find it hard to believe that they were unaware of Lesnar's misconduct, especially considering their past track record in dealing with similar situations. Where the lawsuit went wrong. Things started to get a little rough for the Super Samoan after a U.S. District Court dismissed all charges filed against the UFC and Dana White, except for the one that breaking the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing back in March of 2019. But that too was eventually kicked to the curb on the summary judgment. All in all, despite evidence, the court found the defendants not guilty on all accounts. But, like the fighter that he is, Hunt decided to soldier on. Back in September of 2021, Hunt's lawyers made an appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit to review the judgment. The court declared Hunt's charges of fraud and battery as valid and ordered for a proper court case to be registered in the district court. Now here's the real kicker. According to a recent report from BJ Penn, the UFC has apparently managed to get Mark to cover all of their legal fees. Since the majority of Mark Hunt's claims against the UFC were dismissed, the company now has its eyes dead set on Mark Hunt's wallet, as they are trying to make Mark pay up a total of about $388,235.22. This accounts for $301,792.50 in attorney's fees and $86,442.72 in costs. Now you must be wondering that this surely can't be possible. Well, we have some news for you. There apparently is a clause in Mark's contract that allows the prevailing party to recover its attorney's fees and costs. Mark Hunt's reaction to the news. Well, Mark Hunt didn't take the news so well. He was understandably distraught in his Instagram post where he posted a screenshot of BJ Penn's article stating in the caption, "2022, the start of a new year, and you saying I gotta pay this? Come on, bro." Mark Hunt claims that he doesn't have to pay the UFC anything, and that is technically true. You see, Mark doesn't have to pay up until the court hearing's over. The charges of fraud and battery are finished up, but considering the Samoan heavyweight's luck with this case, it won't be long until he has that check. Mark Hunt's unusual proposal to Dana White and the Fertitta brothers. In a last-ditch attempt to get the UFC to drop the fees, Mark has offered a rather unusual proposal. Instead of backing down on the legal dispute, the Super Samoan wants to settle this beef once and for all in the only way he knows how, in the octagon. Who will be his opponent, you ask? Well, you should be asking who his opponents will be, since the former champion is ready to go up against not one, not two, but three opponents. Mark Hunt has issued an open challenge to the UFC president Dana White, along with former co-owners Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, for a 5-round MMA fight. He issued the challenge in an Instagram post captioned, "Mark the Super Samoan versus Dana the Parasite White, Lorenzo Fertitta, and Frank Fertitta." In the same post, Mark claimed that the Fertitta brothers, along with their scum friends, have sucked the life out of multiple fighters. Mark then went on to state that if he loses, he'll pay up, but if he wins, the higher-ups have to pay back every single fighter they have ripped off since starting the the UFC. Well, at least someone is looking out for the fighters, since the UFC clearly isn't. Dana White's response: while everyone would love to see a bunch of suits get absolutely rocked with a Super Samoan, it's very unlikely that this match will ever happen. Dana White's yet to make a comment regarding Mark Hunt's challenge, but it's an easy guess what his answer will be. But here's to hoping that Dana's ego gets the best of him and he agrees to face off against Hunt. Mark Hunt's relationship with Dana White and the UFC over the years. Mark Hunt's relationship with his boss Dana has become incredibly strained ever since the incident at UFC 200. The constant back and forth between the two has led many fans to believe that Mark Hunt's days in the octagon are far gone in the past. It's obvious neither UFC nor Mark Hunt has any intention of working with each other anytime soon. Probably the only time Mark will agree to enter the octagon is when Dana White is standing on the other side. It's truly a shame how the management at UFC has treated a legend like Mark Hunt over the past few years. It's painful to see Mark go out on such a sour note. If this does mark the end of his career, at least the Super Samoan will go down in history as one of the all-time greats. Jake Paul's challenge to Dana White and other news. Mark Hunt might not be the only one bidding farewell to the sport this year, since Jake Paul might also be hanging up his gloves for a shockingly great cause. One of the reasons Dana White is yet to get back to Mark Hunt might be that he's too busy arguing with Jake Paul on Twitter, but surprisingly enough, the Paul brother isn't the villain of this story. The whole Paul versus White debacle started when Jake tweeted out in favor of providing UFC fighters better working conditions, to which Dana responded, "Nobody on earth thinks you really wrote that. You're too stupid." Yikes, imagine that being your response to genuine concern for your employees. Paul escalated things by adding the stipulation of his retirement from boxing if White agrees to provide his workers with long-term health care, a 50% share of the UFC revenues, and a massive increase in minimum pay. And while the timing of this does seem a little suspicious, since Paul's trying to get booked in a UFC fight right now, at least it's bringing the horrible conditions UFC workers have to work into the light. Seems like everyone's looking out for the well-being of UFC fighters, but Dana White himself. But this isn't the end of it. UFC President Dana White has issued a challenge of his own to Jake Paul. White addressed Paul in a tweet stating, "This guy keeps saying that I'm a cokehead. He can randomly cocaine test me for the next 10 years. If I can randomly steroid test him for the next 2. And that's a wrap for this video. Did you agree with Mark Hunt, or did the court make the right decision? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one.